This is your daily briefing and you are most welcome to it. This channel is obviously, the clue's in the name, predominantly about Spurs. But I think it helps us if we're the top 20%, the top 5%, whatever we are. If we're better than some of the screaming and shouting that definitely goes on, both here and on the white noise of social media, then to compare and contrast ourselves and our thoughts with those of others is surely invaluable. And if it isn't invaluable, it might be fun. So I started watching the Leeds documentary, which I finished, which I told you about. And I was emotionally caught up in that, 100%, with the characters, not just the footballers themselves, but the fans and that football thing that is very difficult to describe. And yesterday I began watching the Manchester City All or Nothing, and that was a very, very different experience. I was left surrounded with much more regimented emotions, and I certainly was engaged less with the players and less with the supporters, and I think the story was different. It's got some age to it, as I say. It was shot a few years ago now, but the principles of it, I think, remain true and the same about what that club was seeking to do, and it was on a slightly different mission to that of either Tottenham or Leeds. From what I've watched to date, this was on a far different emotional trajectory than the Leeds documentary, which, as I say, I got kind of voluntarily sucked into. And that was a story, the Leeds story, the Elland Road story. That was a story about a lot of hearts that were battered, bruised, but not beaten. Whereas City, this was almost like a commercial project. There was less lost in the wilderness and rectifying the wrongs of the past, or certainly that was the way it was presented. And it was more about bringing in teams of people, management teams and playing teams and tactical teams in order to achieve specific goals. And my notes here are just littered with references to military precision and stuff just being augmented in a very precise way. And I've put here, in fact, what I was watching was effectively a military exercise, which for those of you who have been witness to one, is either something to be a little afraid of or a little proud of, dependent upon one's viewpoint. And I think that's how I felt, because I wanted Leeds to win. I wanted Leeds to be promoted because I bought into the whole deal. Whereas with City, it was more of just standing back in awe and just seeing that this had been done and that had been done and this was the reason for that and this was checked and this was triple checked, and it was far more about the military precision vibe. So there were small things like no City player particularly annoyed me, whereas after watching 20 minutes of the Tottenham thing, which came across in contrast to both Leeds and City as horribly staged, I have to add, there were several players on a shortlist I didn't want to be stuck in a lift with, neither in a 62,000 capacity stadium either. But the sense of my own emotions, and I don't want to disappear up my own pea-brush here, but the sense of my own emotions while I watched this was my brain kept on saying, but you don't really care about Aguero. You can't really bite into Pep. You're not really, but at the same time, it was like watching the red arrows go overhead. It was watching the guards change at Buckingham Palace. And what we're talking about here, when you break that down, is you're talking about a ruthless attention to detail of a business. And the fact that, sure, the crowds are all sat there and the players run out and they're waving and cheering and it looks like a football match, but it's in actual fact a world away from what was happening at Tottenham, and a world away even from what was happening at Leeds. Spurs, and this is the thing, that the killer Okay, so this is almost like my conclusion here. But Daniel Levy's ENIC is some weird threadstone project where minds are wiped and installed in place of normal critical thought. We have this absolute toffee about sustainability and inability to compete with dirty Russian or dirty oil money, which, as I've mentioned to you before on the part on here and on my blog, it's got more than a faint whiff of racism about it. The reality is that when we were all at school playing football, the kids all lined up, and you didn't say, oh, let's have a collective thing where everybody... No, you picked the best players, and you hoped that it was a great opportunity if you weren't... You got a captain of a team who wasn't particularly popular. He didn't need any character to bring them in, and that's how money works, by the way. Didn't need any character, didn't need any sort of bond between him and the players. He just went, I'll have that one because I've got first pick, and the other guy gets the second best player, blah, blah, blah. And at the end, there's you and me and the other kids in the line, hoping that we at least get a go, get a touch of the ball. But we've been fed this line, and Spurs have actually spent fortunes. I mean, there's a moment in perhaps the only legitimate moment in the All or Nothing documentary where Daniel Levy, they're sat in the office, there's him and Hitchin and perhaps Cullen, and they're talking about, oh, I suppose we better get a backup striker in. You know, like they've been just dragged out of doing something far more important. And it goes back to that I've got bigger fish to fry thing with Levy. No, you haven't. These are your fish, mate, and this is your fryer. Don't, stay focused. Oh, I suppose... And then he says, oh, we spent 82 or 200 and something, or whatever it was, some big telephone number on players. He said, but nobody talks about that. Yeah, but nobody talks about it, Daniel, because you bought, in the main, junk. And you've got form for buying cheap and buying twice. And which is why you're not respected in the markets. And as Danny Rose said, Tottenham fans had to keep Googling players they were buying in. Whereas, with the money, City just go out and get the right guy to fit the hole. And Leeds United are looking for the right personality with the right talent levels to fit the missing hole in the squad. And the story we're fed is little hard done by Johnny Hotspur can't afford to get big deals done. Yet this is the same clown that was able to pull 240 million quid out of his sporran to toss into the stadium project. Spurs players looked like they were something out of the territorial army, with the exception of Højbjerg, I would say, and Kane. City's players look like special forces. So I'm going to keep watching the City thing, but I really feel that I'm watching a showreel for success. And the idea that the notion that Tottenham knit their own players, they've got a little, underground bunker of grandmothers knitting players, whereas other big, nasty, horrible people are spending money which is very questionable. That's what financial fair play is for. And I'm fed up of being lied to. And I'm fed up of being fed on BS and disinformation. So I come away from another Amazon documentary, grateful it was made. I've enjoyed watching it. It's a page turner. I'm definitely going to watch more episodes. But what I've learned isn't very nice when I cast a compare to the club that I've got no choice over, that I support with all my heart and have done since I was a small child. There's a lot of thought needs to go into the whole business of ENIC and Levy in particular. It's not as easy as holding up bed sheets. We're beyond that now. I and others tried to warn you many years ago, but by the time they demolished the stadium, it was too late. So, if you're bored, if you're at a loose end and you don't mind the little frisson of perhaps some civil disorder, then go and drink a can of beer and hold a bed sheet up. But my advice is to think a little bit more tactically at this stage, because we're a long way behind. Far too far behind. and Leeds United stock is rising. Manchester City stays as buoyant as it ever has. I wish I had more cheer for you, but if you think I'm going to give you some of the regurgitated rumours that are doing the round, including Davinson Sanchez plus 30 million quid for some guy, you're out of your minds. It's all waffle, baloney. Forget about it. Right, that's it for another day. There won't be anything else later because I am going to have some breakfast and then I'm going to find a rather nice pub beer garden because that's what I do occasionally. Good luck. Keep it Tottenham.